The New York Mets won another series, but this wasn't just another series. This was the series. The New York Mets went into Atlanta with the division at stake, heading into the All-Star break. Who would be in first place when we get into the second half? And you know what they did? They took 2 or 3 from the Braves. On the show today, I'm going to talk about another good performance by Mets starting pitcher in Chris Bassitt. The offense finally came alive in this game. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about the importance of this series, and we'll close out the show today previewing what lies ahead as the Mets now have to finish strong in Chicago against the Cubs. All of that on this edition of Locked On Mets.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're watching Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. If you want to find any of my work, follow me on Twitter at FinkelsteinRyan. You can also find some of my writing at justbaseball.com, where I work as the managing editor, where I actually just wrote the Mets trade deadline outlook. Now, we're going to be talking about that on the show as well, but if you want to check that out at Just Baseball, you can see my thoughts on what the Mets need at the deadline and who they could potentially target to fill those needs. On the show tomorrow, I'm going to talk about the prospects that we could see moved at the deadline, what type of assets do the Mets have, and then next week I'll get into more of the overall outlook of what they should be targeting. But that is for another day. Let's talk about the big story, which is that the Mets just beat the Braves in a series in Atlanta. All of this talk about the big bad Braves. You know what the Mets just did? They said, hey, we're still here, okay? And it starts with the starting pitching. Max Scherzer set the tone in Game 1, went out and shoved, dominated. Game 2, David Peterson made a mistake at the end of his start, but overall was great. And then Chris Bassitt in this one goes 6 innings, 5 hits allowed, 2 walks, 6 strikeouts, only 1 run allowed. Matt Olson, the one Brave that really showed up in this series, hit a home run against Bassitt. But overall, 6 innings pitched, just that 1 run allowed, has his ERA down to 3.79 on the year. But it's all about the offense in this game. Eduardo Escobar hit his 10th home run of the season. A while back, I said, hey, if he gets to 22 home runs, I think that was when he hit his 7th. I said, hey, we get 15 more home runs from Eduardo Escobar if I'm the Mets. Pretty thrilled. So he's starting to heat up a little bit when it comes to the long ball. That's his, again, 10th home run of the season. Gave the Mets a lead in the second. Then you had Francisco Lindor hit a 3-run shot in the third. Lindor in this series, which of course was a massive series, went 5 for 14, a triple home run, 4 RBIs. Just was amazing. You look at what he's done this year, and yeah, you say 750 OPS, you know, a little bit better than league average. It's not like he's this incredible offensive force this year, but last year, the guy had 20 home runs and 63 RBIs. This year, he already has 16 home runs and 64 RBIs. And when you really boil it down and you talk about run production, you can still make the argument that Lindor has been the Mets' second most productive player when it comes to putting runs on the scoreboard. Now, Jeff McNeil has been a better hitter. Starling Marte probably been a better hitter. If we dive deep into the numbers, not that I have them in front of me, maybe Brandon Nimmo has had a better offensive season. But if you really look at what matters, this guy's doing it for the Mets. And, I mean, he's on pace for a 29 home run season, 116 RBIs. One of the things I've said constantly when evaluating Lindor, it's, you know, this is a Gold Glove shortstop. You know, that's the type of defense he gives you. And that's huge for your ball club, who can hit 30 home runs and drive in 100 on any given year. And that's what he's on pace to do this year. His 15 home runs are second among NL shortstops. His 64 RBIs, the most among MLB shortstops. Now, with that, the Mets had that 4-0 lead. You felt really confident at that point. Mark Canha homered in the 6th. That gave the Mets a 5-0 lead. Louis Guillorme doubled in a run in the 7th. There was a lot of talk before the game. I can't believe Guillorme's batting cleanup for this Mets team, kind of showing the state of the offense, that they were struggling so much. And just the fact that when you don't have McNeil in the lineup, you don't have Starling Marte, suddenly here's Guillorme, the soft-hitting slap hitter, as a cleanup guy. Well, guess what? He slapped one down the line, got an RBI double. The Mets scored another run as Jesse Sanchez bulked in one, and that is how they got to their 7 runs in this game. But every single hitter in the starting lineup got on base, and overall, they did exactly what you've been wanting them to do lately. Hit the home run ball, get yourself a cushion, and boy, I hate to go right back to the Lindor homer, but that one felt so good. To have that big lead against the Braves, considering how this series has went, where it always felt like these two teams were a run or two apart from each other, to have a 4-0 lead that turned into a 5-0 lead, you felt so confident, and then you were just wondering, all right, is Edwin Diaz going to have to get into this game? You know that he would have pitched in 4 games in 5 days had they gone to him here. You got a 4-game series against the Cubs. Great to give him 2 days off ahead of that series because you don't know what's going to happen out there. You want to have your closer ready to go to save a couple potentially, assuming the Mets can't just handle business and beat up on that bad Cubs team. But we'll talk about that in the final segment. When it comes to the other relievers that got the job done, Drew Smith did give up another home run. That's been a problem for him, but he gave the Mets 2 innings of relief, and he got 5 strikeouts in those 2 innings. And Tommy Hunter was able to get the job done in the 9th. Allowed a home run, but hey, had a big lead to work with. And again, that allowed the Mets to stay away from their closer. Altogether, just a fantastic series. This is what the Mets have done all year. They won the first game, they lose the second game of a 3-game series, and they win the final game. And here is a little bit of a shout out to the old host of Locked On Braves. Nothing against Jake Mastrioni, the current host. He does a great job, but it's hard for me to kind of go at Jake. You know, he's a really nice guy and well-mannered. It's just not someone that I go out of my way and say, hey, I kind of hate you because you're a Braves fan. Dylan Short, he is that guy for me. He is the cocky, loud, brash Braves fan. And we've been going at it for years now. Previously on crossover episodes when he still hosted Locked On Braves, and now on Twitter a little bit. And here is the passive-aggressive BS statement that he had after this series. He goes, hey, I'll give the Mets credit. I thought for sure we've been watching them cry after losing the division lead yesterday. So for them, this was definitely a big series. Basically brushing it off, hey, this is the Braves series to win. That is the exact fan that is starting to rub me the wrong way. And I want to talk about him and the Braves fan base and what this series meant for the Mets in just a minute. But first, whether you're ready to pop the question or if you're celebrating a milestone moment, find jewelry as unique as her with the modern convenience of online shopping at BlueNile.com. There you can build the engagement ring of her dreams. Blue Nile has simple online tools to let you choose the diamond shape, size, and clarity as well as the setting style. Blue Nile's bench jewelers will then handcraft her perfect engagement ring. Each ring is one of a kind, so you can celebrate life special moments with fine jewelry by going to Blue Nile, where they have jewelry experts on hand 24/7 available via phone or chat to help you find a memorable gift at every budget. Make your moment sparkle with jewelry from BlueNile.com, and Locked On Mets listeners get $50 off purchases of $500 or more. This podcast exclusive includes engagement, so all you have to do is use the code LOCKEDON. Again, that's code LOCKEDON. Plus, every order is insured, ships free, and arrives in discreet packaging that won't give away what's inside. Shop stress-free and find your forever peace by going to BlueNile.com today. So after that series, the New York Mets now once again hold a 2.5-game lead over the Braves in this division. As long as they go into Chicago here and split this upcoming series, get 2 of those games, you're pretty confident that no matter what happens, or you will know, even if the Braves sweep their 4-game set against the Nationals, the Mets will have a division lead going into the break. If the Mets really handle business and take 3 of 4 or 4 of 4, and who knows what happens in Washington, you never know. Nationals could surprise us. The Mets are in prime position to have a lead and probably even a couple game lead as you head into this all-star break. The Mets desperately need some time to reset, I think, and obviously with Jacob deGrom continuing his rehab, you look at the other side of the break, the potential to have Jeff McNeil back in the lineup, who could be there as soon as this weekend in Chicago. Charlie Morton could be back as well, but then you also can get deGrom in the fold, the rotation. That will potentially push one of their guys into the bullpen, or maybe the Mets go with the 6-man rotation. Regardless, on the other side of the break, the Mets are going to be a better team than they were in this series. And then, on the other side of the trade deadline, when the Mets play 5 games against the Braves early on in August at Citi Field, they're definitely going to have a better roster to put forth. You also then have a 4-game series not far after that in Atlanta. And as I've talked about, that stretch there where it's 9 games out of 15 where the Mets will go head-to-head with the Braves is going to decide the division. But you get a fan like Dylan Short who wants to just continue to ride on his high horse and almighty because the big bad Braves win every single year. I can't wait until we get to a point where this Mets franchise can start to really stick it to the Braves. And I'm not saying the Braves are going to be bad. They're a well-run team. I'm not going to disrespect them the way they like to disrespect the Mets. I'm not doing that. But what I will say is the lazy argument of Mets are gonna Mets and it's always gonna collapse because they're the Mets. Why don't you have some facts behind your argument? So I'll give you a couple here if you want to look at the Mets side of it. Here's a fact. The Atlanta Braves, as great as Max Fried is, they don't have a single pitcher as good as Max Scherzer. And you know what else they don't have? A pitcher as good as Jacob deGrom. So the Mets have the 2 best pitchers, and if you're going into any series where the Mets can stack up Scherzer and deGrom, and then even Bassett, who we saw today, did a great job against that Braves lineup, you feel pretty confident, and you go deeper down the rotation. As much as Charlie Morton has come back to earth a little bit this year, and then he ended up going on a hot streak, whatever version of Charlie Morton you're getting, I don't think he stacks up to the top 3 in the Mets rotation. And really, what we saw today is the exact reason why Morton has had such an uneven year, because he can hang some pitches, and that's what we saw. Like, as much as you got to credit Escobar and Canha and Lindor for hitting their home runs, all those pitches were hung. Now, credit to Mark Canha in particular, because he had a really good at-bat before hitting his home run, as did Lindor, and Escobar, had a great job to pull that one out. But the point is, I look at that Braves rotation, and to me, as good as they can be, I still think the Mets have such an edge there, and that's what matters when you play these series. The reason why the Mets just won that series, because they had a better starting rotation than the Atlanta Braves. And this is, I believe, the worst the Mets are going to look for the remainder of the season against that Braves team. So when you add in, who knows, a Josh Bell at the trade deadline, whether it's Mark Vientos coming up, whether it is making a trade, and let's just say you get a David Robertson and a Wilson Contreras for the Cubs. Now you got a new catcher, a new reliever. Maybe they go out and they reunite with old friend Michael Fulmer and bring him in as a late inning reliever. He's got a sub-2 ERA this year. Whatever it is, the Mets are going to make moves at the deadline. And I look at the Braves right now, and yeah, they can make moves as well, but what exactly are they going to do? Like, what position do they have that's a real upgrade from what they're currently at? Now, this is a credit to them because they have a deep team, but outside of maybe getting a second baseman in there, I think what we just saw is pretty much the best they're going to be. Maybe their bullpen gets a little bit better. They get Jansen back. Maybe they make some trades, but the Mets just beat the best that the Braves have to offer as far as the roster is concerned. Now, they're going to play better, I'm sure, in some of these subsequent series, but there's no reason to think the Mets can't continue to hold on to this division. And what they just did, that sends a message. It sends a message that this Mets team's legit. They're not going to back down to anybody, and they're not scared of the Atlanta Braves. They went out, they took Game 1 because Max Scherzer was amazing, and they took Game 3 on the strength of their bats, and then, of course, still getting the quality pitching performance by Bassett in the middle of it all. So I think this is such a confidence boost for this Mets team. You now head out to Chicago, and this is a pivotal series because the last thing you want is to take your foot off the gas right before the finish line, and suddenly you drop 3 of 4 to a Cubs team that's terrible, and the Braves sweep the Nationals, and everything you just worked for goes away. So this is a really important final, little series here. You got to handle business, but everything is lined up for the Mets to carry at least a 2-game lead into the All-Star break. And then on the other side of it, I still think the Mets' best baseball is ahead of them, and it certainly will be again. Can't mention this enough. Jacob deGrom will make a rehab start on Friday. He's getting close. He's in Syracuse now. Maybe one more rehab start after that. I'm not quite sure off the top of my head how the minor league schedule, scratches out as far as the All-Star break. If they are still playing, I don't exactly know. But the point is, whether he has a rehab start against another team or they throw a bunch of hitters from Syracuse at deGrom, whatever it is, he's going to start on Friday. You got Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, so maybe next Wednesday he has another type of a rehab start. And then you're looking at the following weekend against the San Diego Padres as a potential return. That's where this Mets team suddenly gets very, very scary for the Atlanta Braves. As much as those fans want to puff their chest and say they're not worried about the Mets and Mets are going to Mets, just wait until they have to face Max Scherzer and Jacob deGrom in a series and see how cocky and confident they remain. But this weekend, as I already mentioned, very important. So I'm going to preview what lies ahead against the Chicago Cubs in just a minute. First, though, BetOnline.net is your number one source for all of your betting needs and sports info. Find all the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, as BetOnline is your continued source for all of your sports wagering information, including live betting, esports, and scores. BetOnline.net is the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite sports and events, including MMA, boxing, golf, and baseball. Make sure you're on the Pete Alonso home run derby bet. You know he's going to win, folks. Put some money on it, and you will be very happy with the result. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in the action. Bet online, where the game starts. Looking at the Chicago Cubs this season, they are 34-53. They're 4-7 in July. That is before playing later on tonight against the Orioles to close out that series. Not a good baseball team. Now, their lineup has some pop in. It's a pretty decent lineup altogether. It's not a bunch of names that will jump out to you, but Wilson Contreras has an 862 OPS. Ian Happ, 824 OPS. Christopher Morel, a really solid rookie, 815 OPS. Another solid rookie, Seiya Suzuki, of course, the international star, with an 804 OPS. And you have Patrick Wisdom, with a 780 OPS and 17 home runs. They are 13th in baseball in team OPS and 12th in runs scored. So they can score runs. In the past 15 days in particular, they're a top 10 offense. But you look at the net result of their season, you look at their record and everything else, and this is not a team you should be scared of. This is a team the Mets should roll over. Now, it's Carlos Carrasco versus Keegan Thompson in Game 1. You look at the ERAs, and the Cubs do have an edge here. Carrasco at 4.55, Thompson at 3.04. We've seen at times, Cookie can get hit a little bit hard, and it's a smaller ballpark in Chicago, so not the best matchup for him, but at the same time, we've seen other, outings where Carrasco goes out and he's able to really dominate. To me, prime opportunity to get your 10th win of the season heading into the break. And for Thompson, he's a solid pitcher. Last time out, he really did well against the Dodgers. 8 strikeouts, did not allow a run in 5 2/3. So it's not an easy matchup for the Mets by any stretch, but I'm not going to say the Mets can't fare well against any of these guys we're going to talk about this weekend. But the real game that everyone should be tuning in on is Taijuan Walker versus Marcus Stroman on Friday. That's going to be awesome. Now, these two guys were really close friends. I'm sure they're going to relish the opportunity to go against each other. This year, for Walker, it has been a return to what he was in the first half last season, where he was an all-star, a 2.63 ERA. For Marcus Stroman, yikes. Not good. Not good at all. Now, he did deal with an injury, hasn't had a completely fluid season, but boy, has he been bad, and he's been bad at home. I believe that his ERA at home's over 9. Not really great to pitch in Chicago, particularly without the same team defense he enjoyed behind him last year. Not that Francisco Lindor was the sole reason that Stroman had one of the best years of his career, but he certainly helped a little bit. I think this is going to be a fun one, though. Marcus Stroman, I'm not going to knock him. I know there is kind of a tendency when a player leaves, hey, let's all pile on him, and now everyone hates him. When Stroman was a Met, he was a lot of fun to watch. Fans really enjoyed him at the time, although there was kind of a split on you either hated or you loved Marcus Stroman, and now there's some people that used to love him that are just piling into the hate him category. I think it's going to be fun to watch him pitch again against this Mets team. He's going to be amped for it, so that's going to be a really fun and interesting matchup. I like the Mets odds, though, in that one. Now, it only gets better on Saturday. Max Scherzer versus Drew Smiley, a 2.15 ERA for Scherzer, 4.43 for Smiley. Soft-tossing lefty who's not having the best year. I'll be in attendance. I get to watch a Max Scherzer start in person with my dad, my sister, and my brother-in-law. Cannot wait for that game. Absolutely thrilled about it. I'm heading out for All-Star Week. My sister lives in a suburb outside of Chicago, so I'm going to be out there for the next, 9 days or something. I leave it on Friday, and I'm going to enjoy my All-Star break out there with some family, so that's going to be a lot of fun, but that game is going to be awesome. I cannot wait for it. That's the one that you're circling right now. You're like, okay, that looks like a win, right? So we definitely go into the right game. I will also be there on Sunday with just my dad. We're going to a David Peterson start. Not quite as exciting as Max Scherzer, but still going to be fun to see him pitch. He's been so good this year. One last start before the break to kind of put a stamp on what's been a really great run for him. I talked about it on, was it yesterday's show, right? About the slider usage and how his slider has really helped transform him, and he's been a much better strikeout pitcher this year. I look at that Cubs lineup, and there are some righties in it, but he's fared pretty good against righties this year, so I think David Peterson should be able to be successful. He'll be going up against Adrian Sampson, who's making his 5th turn in the rotation for the Cubs. Kind of a new addition for them there. A 3.33 ERA on this season. So a little bit of an unknown commodity the Mets will be facing off in that last game. But the mission's simple here. Take 3 of 4. Win one more series. The Mets have done an amazing job all year long. The mission's always simple. You go into each series, you want to win it. They haven't been a team that sweeps a bunch of series, but they also have been winning a lot more than they've been losing series. That has been their recipe. Buck Showalter, I think, probably really does enforce that kind of day-to-day aspect of, hey, series at a time, series at a time, series at a time. I'm sure he'll have this team focused. You get Jeff McNeil back, likely get Charlie Morton back in that lineup. Edwin Diaz is fresh to go for this series. Adam Ottavino, also fresh as well. So your best 2 relievers are reared up and ready to fire. This is going to be, I believe, a nice little series for the Mets to close out the break here. And then you get to, take a step back and appreciate what the Mets just did in the first half once we get into next week. On the show tomorrow, I already mentioned it, going to be talking a little bit of prospects, but this time it's going to be prospects that could be moved, who's untouchable, who is on the table, what is the degree here of the type of assets the Mets have and what they can get for them. So we're going to do all that stuff. I'll obviously, of course, recap the first game of this series against the Cubs. Make sure you tune in. As always, thank you for listening. Make sure you follow, rate, and review wherever you get your podcast. Make sure you follow me on Twitter, @FinkelsteinRyan. Follow the show, @Locked On Mets. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listen every day. Now for your second listen, check out Locked On MLB Prospects, hosted by Lindsey Crosby. Locked On MLB Prospects is where you want to go to stay up to date with everything going on in Major League Baseball when it comes to the stars of tomorrow. You can follow Locked On MLB Prospects wherever you get podcasts.